the marriage has to come first. If you're married, your marriage has to be your priority. It has to be. I mean, just think about how foundational your relationship with your parents is. I mean, it shapes you profoundly. You live as a child of your parents forever. And so it's a foundational relationship. What could be more profound and primary and foundational a relationship than between a parent and a child? But Genesis 2:20 and Ephesians 5:31 both say there is a relationship that is more foundational and more primary. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Which means, biblically speaking, marriage is supposed to supplant the parent-child relationship. It's supposed to. There's supposed to be a complete shift in priorities when you get married. See, God did not put a parent and child in the garden. God put a man and a woman in the garden, a husband and a wife. And what that means is that the primary relationship in your life, once you get married, has to be your marriage. The primary person in your life has to be your spouse. No other person, not one, should get the kind of investment that your spouse receives. No other relationship should get the resources that your marriage gets. Not even the parent-child relationship. I suspect that's another reason why our society hates marriage so much right now. Because marriage forces a reprioritization. You can't be married and selfish and have a successful marriage. It just won't work. But as a child, you can still feel selfish well into your 40s. Say, my parents should still be devoted to me. I'm their child. You're not giving me enough time. But when you're married, if you want it to be successful, you have to focus on your spouse. It ain't about you anymore. And if it is, you're headed to trouble. So when Scripture says the two become one flesh, that's where this kind of commitment of the two operate together as one person. That idea of flesh doesn't refer to just the physical body. It refers to the wholeness of the person. It's saying that when you come together, you make a new person together. And what this means is that there has never been a marriage, there has never been a unit, there has never been a family like yours. Yours is unique. You are both unique separately. God made you unique as individuals, but now you come together in a new, never before seen compound, amalgamation of uniqueness. You're not just like your father and mother, nor are you like your spouse's mother or father. And that's part of what it means to leave them behind. You're making something new together. So you can't come in and say, well, in my family, the man always does this. Well, in my family, this is the way we always give gifts. Well, in my family, when the first child comes along, this is what the wife does. That's trying to be the compound that your parents were when they came together. You're creating a new person, unifying and amalgamating two unique people into something better, more complete, with more capabilities than they had separately. As a new relational compound, you are renegotiating everything else outside of that relationship together on the basis of your particular needs, your particular capacities, your particular potentials together. Everything. You can't negotiate based on what your parents' needs were. How could you possibly know? You were selfish the entire time you knew them. You have to develop a whole new culture, a whole new ceremony, a whole new ritual in terms of your rhythms of your life. And if you don't, you haven't really left father and mother behind. Marriage has to have the priority. Your marriage has to have the priority over your parents' marriage, over your career, over the views of everybody else in your life, and over your children. Oh. That one's a big one, especially in marriage. See, children mess up some marriages because becoming a parent suddenly feels like it should be the main priority. I mean, after all, they come into this world as this helpless child, and I've got to do everything for them. And some parents never leave that behind. But let me point out, you only have your children temporarily. You see, that's the way God designed it. You're raising them up. Sure, they need to be a priority while you have them, but your whole purpose as a parent is to move your children out into the world. We're going to look at this more when we get to Ephesians chapter 6 in a couple of weeks. Your job as a parent is to get your kids to a place where they don't need you. Just like you were supposed to leave your parents, they're supposed to leave you. So by definition, the commitment that you have to your children is less than the commitment that you're supposed to have for your spouse. Remember, it's permanent. So yes, of course, you'll always be your child's mother or father. That role will never change once it's started. You're always going to be identifying yourself that way. But that doesn't make it the primary relationship. And if it supplants the marriage as the primary relationship, you're doing it wrong. So you're supposed to come together and create a new flesh with someone else. And when you do, you won't be the same person anymore. And they will do the same thing. They will create a new relationship with their spouse. And when they do, they're not going to be the same child you raised anymore. And you have to come to grips with that. And if your children are more important to you than your spouse, well, all kinds of pathologies crop up in that kind of a marriage. So be careful that nothing comes before your marriage in your life, or it's gonna introduce tremendous misery and pathologies into your life. It just will. I mean, God's order works best when it is enjoyed and not contested. So look at what Paul says in verse 28. I love this statement. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. And most husbands look at this and go, oh boy, here we go. I mean, can't we get back to the submitting thing? Because this seems really hard. But I find this statement fascinating, not just from the extreme spiritual role that is given to husbands, but for what it says about our one flesh together. You don't have to listen very long to our culture to know that health is a central narrative in almost every corner of our society, although for some reason there's a new narrative starting that says that you don't have to be healthy, and that's going to not last very long. But you have to know that health is foundational to everything that you do. If you decide to put your work ahead of your health, guess what? At some point, you'll have neither. Because your health will dictate that you can't work anymore once it goes. And so this is why you have to take care of your body. But Paul says, you have to take care of your marriage the same way, just like your own body. Because it operates within the same health principles, the same spiritual health principles, the same relational health principles. It's the same as the physical health principles about your body. It has to be the first priority. So when you're married, the health of your marriage is going to affect everything. The relative health of your marriage will affect everything. If your marriage is strong, it doesn't matter what else is going on in your life. You're going to have the strength to overcome those things in your life. But if you focus in on other things like your career, then your marriage is going to be weak. And those other things just aren't going to sustain you. So it's just like if you put those things ahead of your health is going to suffer. If your marriage is at the center of everything and then you neglect your marriage, then all of those other things that you put ahead of marriage are eventually going to become meaningless themselves. I don't know, some guy named Solomon wrote about stuff like that. Marriage has to be your first priority. That's just the way marriage was built in your life.